What happens when Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, the NRA, and Democrats in general agree on something? Something suspect. I'll tell you that much. So what's happening, and if I'm not mistaken, it's happening right now as we speak. There is still a filibuster going on in the Senate. To give you the backdrop, this has been a pretty eventful day. It started off with Donald Trump, and let me start there. Let me start with Donald Trump because that's actually the first thing that was in play this morning. Donald Trump sent out a tweet stating that that he was going to meet with the NRA, who had endorsed him, to talk about not allowing people on terrorist watch lists to purchase guns. Now, at face value, there's a lot wrong with, no, let me rephrase that, not face value. When you look underneath it, you realize there's a lot going on with that tweet, right? There's a lot going on and implications. You have to dig a little bit deeper. There's things that we have to discuss regarding all of that. However, at face value, something has to be said, and it just kind of, it's insane that Donald Trump would directly challenge not the NRA so much as the right wing, the Second Amendment crazies in his party. Like, Donald Trump literally took it to his craziest base today with this one tweet. And notwithstanding that the implications of this conversation that they're supposed to have probably would result in nothing. Never mind that. Never mind that if it resulted in something, it would result in something that is actually problematic in the first place, right? We get that. All of that set aside, he still tweeted out something, a message to all of America, that he was willing to step on the toes of his Second Amendment nuts. I could have just said it like that. He's stepping on his Second Amendment nuts. And you can see this by the response, the visceral response that came from all over right-wing America. I mean, redstate.com, they lost their shit today because Donald Trump sent this message out saying that he's going to speak with the NRA. I mean, conservatives lost their mind. And I don't know. It's one of two things. It's either Donald Trump being a very astute politician and playing a very calculated political game, or it's Donald Trump saying this is something I think is the right thing to do and I don't care what the nuts in my party says. Either way it goes, that is problematic for Hillary Clinton. Because if he is calculating, it's hard for me to think that Donald Trump is actually thinking, right? I'm not crazy enough to actually think that he's as dumb as I say he is. Donald Trump is not as dumb as we say he is. I think he is a very calculating person. He has to be underneath. And if he's calculating on this level, where here's the calculation. You want to know what the calculation is? This is the calculation. One, he already understands that this is a policy that the NRA essentially says they would be willing to get behind. Mitch McConnell has already previously said that it's something he's willing to get behind if the necessary precautions are put in place to protect civil liberties and due process. That's calculation number one. Number two, it gives him the ostensible high ground on a conversation that is usually relegated to liberals. Really, before anybody did anything this afternoon, and we'll get to the filibuster, Donald Trump came out of the gate first saying that he's willing to go and talk to the NRA. Matter of fact, I think I have the tweet. Did I pull the tweet? Yeah, I do have the tweet. Put the tweet on your screen. This is the conversation. I will be meeting with the NRA, who has endorsed me, about not allowing people on the terrorist watch list or the no-fly list to buy guns. Later on, the NRA said, okay, happy to meet with the real Donald Trump. Our position is no guns for terrorists, period. Due process and right to self-defense for law-abiding citizens, law-abiding Americans. So a 1-2 punch, real quick, fast, and in a hurry in the morning before the Democrats could do anything. Donald Trump came out. Now, again, there is a lot to be said about the terrorist watch list, the no-fly list, and everything, all those implications. It's a lot to be said about that, right? But in the world of political theater, Donald Trump scored one first this morning. He scored first this morning. And the NRA acquiesced. They said, okay, fine, we're down with that. The reason they're down with that is also a part of the political calculation, right? The political calculation is that this terrorist fly list and the terrorist watch list, rather, those don't affect their demographics as much as their audience really tries to feign disgust over. The people who are on the no-fly list, the people who are on the terrorist watch list, are overwhelmingly people of color. And yes, there are some people of color who are part of the NRA. I get it. But the demographics of the NRA, those people are not the ones who are arbitrarily being put on this list. And the concept that there is a list out there that is so subjective to policies that are not transparent and decisions that are more difficult to undo to get off versus how easy it is to get on. The list is so problematic in the first place that it is something that the due process that the NRA is actually saying they want to ensure is actually the right thing. This is the crazy world that this is all that's happened today. Today, Donald Trump said, I'm going to challenge my nutcases by having a conversation with the NRA on a no-fly list that probably shouldn't exist in the first place, but we can all agree, in his world, we can all agree that the terrorists that are on that list, or the so-called terrorists or the suspected terrorists on that list, should not be able to purchase guns. NRA came right back and said, we agree. Let's just make sure there are protections for due process. All right. So that was this morning. And the NRA actually came out with a full statement, and I want to read the full statement for you because it actually partially makes sense. I'll put it on your screen. This is from today. The NRA believes that terrorists should not be allowed to purchase or possess firearms, period. Anyone on the terror watch list who tries to buy should be thoroughly investigated by the FBI and the sale delayed while the investigation is ongoing. If an investigation uncovers evidence of terrorist activities or involvement, the government should be allowed to immediately go to court, block the sale, and arrest the terrorist. At the same time, due process protections should be put in place that allow law-abiding Americans who have been wrongly put on a watch list to be removed. That has been the position of John Cornyn, a Republican of Texas, and the majority of the U.S. Senate. Sadly, President Obama and his allies will prefer to play politics with this issue. Guys, it pains me. It pains me to say this, but the NRA is not wrong completely on their statement. I think it's disingenuous. I think they're really expressing this outrage simply because of guns, right? I don't think they have a true concern about the fly list, the no-fly list, and the terrorist watch list. Let's be sure, right? This is the only reason they're worried about the due process is because they have this overarching fear that the tyrannical Obama administration would start arbitrarily putting their perfect demographic of people on the watch list, and then they would not be able to get guns. That's really the motivation behind it. They are not coming out against the no-fly list. They're not coming out against the terrorist watch list. They're simply saying, we don't want that atrocious policy to inhibit people from being able to buy guns. So this is a case of the NRA doing the right thing, but not for the right reasons. But who am I to judge? They're not wrong, because anyone who looks objectively at the way that the names are placed on the terrorist watch list, and you see how arbitrary it is, and you see how difficult it is to get your name cleared after you've been put on it, you realize how problematic it is. So it just feels weird. It feels weird. It felt weird all morning to see Donald Trump being the one willing to step on the feet of his nuts, his right-wing Second Amendment gun nuts. The NRA coming back and saying, yes, let's have this conversation, so long as we make sure there's some protections for due process in it. What kind of world do we live in?